Today we're going to be going over how to build this light that's perfect for painting. Let's start off with the materials that you'll need. First, an LED strip. You're going to want to use something that's close to daylight white. I went with this Govey kind as it's the same type I used in my spray booth, and I find it to be pretty neutral in terms of color temperature. It also doesn't create any banding issue when filming. Next, you'll need a lightweight rigid material like this corrugated plastic board, some diffusion fabric or anything similar to help diffuse the light, and then some more basic building materials like a hot glue gun, a knife, some measuring tools, a pencil or marker, a cutting mat, and lastly, an optional but personal choice for my own light, this back plate, so that the light can be easily mounted onto a tripod. The first thing I did was unbox the LED strip and plug it in to make sure everything was working properly. I also wanted to have the lights out so that I could place some of the diffusion fabric over them to figure out how deep the overall light should be built. If the diffusion fabric is too close to the lights, it won't diffuse them enough to create that nice, soft, even light. Normally the next step would be to cut your plastic board to your desired size for the back panel of the light, but I actually found a piece in my materials pile that was already the perfect size for what I was going for, about 50 by 30 centimeters. Since that was the case, the next step for me was to start measuring strips to create the sides of the light. I cheated a bit and used the main back piece as a guide for the length of the two longer side pieces, but for the short sides, make sure you measure the thickness of the material that you're using for the light frame to add to the measurement for the remaining sides so that everything fits together nicely in the end. I ended up making my strips about 1.5 inches wide, as that's what my little diffusion test it seemed would be a good depth for the overall light to be. And of course you're going to need to cut those strips out carefully before moving on to building the rest of the light. Additionally, I also cut off one of the corners of the main back piece to help feed the cord through, and also as a precaution I cut some holes into the sides and back piece of the plastic board to help with any possible overheating issues of the LED strip. Now that all of the plastic board pieces are cut out, it's time to actually start assembling this light. I ran my hot glue along the bottom of the side piece to attach it to the back panel that way, but you could do the opposite. You also might want to run some hot glue along the inner edge where the two pieces meet, just for added strength. Continue to glue on your side strips onto the back panel of the light until you're left with this finished open box. On the back panel where I actually cut the corner off, I forgot to not glue those edges together, so I ended up having to cut the plastic board so that I could feed the LED strip cord through it. So probably don't be like me and don't actually glue that corner. The next step is going to be starting to stick this LED strip down. You will probably want to actually measure out even distances of where you're going to put the strips along, running them back and forth just so that you have enough LED strip length to cover the entirety of your light pretty evenly. I started by just winging it and I realized that was probably a bad idea, so I did go back and measure. So the one side is possibly a little tighter than it should have been, but since the idea is that the diffusion fabric is going to make this all nice and even, if you're a little tighter on one side, it's probably not going to matter in the long run. Just make sure when you're going in the rows on the corners that you don't make them too tight, as it can damage the LED strip and make part of the strip stop working. I did end up using the entirety of my LED strip, but depending on the size of your overall light that you want, that might not be the case. Next, you're probably going to want to plug that in, make sure everything is working as I blind you here. But once that's all done, it's now time to start adding the diffusion fabric. For mine, I decided to actually use 2 layers, so like a folded piece just for added diffusion, so it was a nice, soft, even light, and I just ended up hot gluing mine onto the sides of the light box. I pulled the bottom layer of fabric really tight, but I made the upper layer slightly looser just so that there was that little added bit of diffusion so that it just wasn't so tight across the entire light box. Once I had the long sides of the fabric glued down, this is when I decided to attach my little tripod mount back plate thing. I wanted to be able to rig this light up pretty much wherever I wanted, which is why I decided to add a tripod attachment, which might be a really good option for you as well, because it means it's a really versatile, easy light to put a lot of different places. And to finish off the fabric gluing on the light, I almost glued it down and tucked the corners like a present, but you can really finish off the edges however you'd like. And here's the finished light panel. A super powerful yet easily built and fairly inexpensive option for your painting setup. I attached my light onto a shelf with a friction arm over my painting area, and so far it's been absolutely amazing. And that is how to make the perfect painting light. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.